thanks to everyone for joining. And I understand, look, it's a Friday at 11 o'clock, and I know that everyone's been putting in some big hours for the assignment. So we appreciate you coming along to this session. We will record it for a lot of the students, Jared, that can't make it. There's some students that have clashes and these things, so we'll record it and we'll sort of share it with you if you want to break it up. Maybe there's some pearls of wisdom for you and your teams as well. So today's session really is an industry engagement session with Jared Baker from Xero, and focusing in that go-to-market and growth space. And we'll introduce Jared a little bit more in his detail. If any issues with recording the session, let us know. Any issues in dropping out, standard Slack Anna, and we'll get you back into the session. The traditional, I just want to wish to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land we're gathered today, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present and emerging. We'll get into the swing of things. This is Jared Baker. I was trying to find the worst photo that I could find, and this is it's actually looking pretty sharp, Jared. But I'd like you to introduce to Jared Baker from Xero. Jared's the sales director at Xero. He's had various roles at Xero. The preeminent role to this was growth strategies for their platform business, and Jared can talk more about that. But he's also had e-commerce roles at Coles and their B2B online ordering platform. He's also had an extended career within the travel space, within a flight centre as well. He's a Kiwi, loves his rugby, and the great thing about being a Victorian is we only talk rugby when Australia is doing well. So we can always navigate around that. And David's a rugby man. He's played rugby around the world as well. So I'll let you guys thrash that out. But we'll get into it. It is an hour session. Thanks to all the students that have passed sent questions through. We'll navigate through that with Jared in a conversation style like we've done previously. Jared, over to you if you just want to give a bit of background and share a bit of your personal journey for the first 5 to 10 minutes.
Well, thanks, Adam. Always lovely to be introduced so kindly. Didn't expect it from you, nor did I expect to see you so well dressed. That's also something I've never encountered, but I'm sure the rest of you see Adam like this all the time. Not what I'm used to at all. I wouldn't be shy about Australian rugby. It's the best season they've had in probably 20 years this year. So undefeated. No games been played, but
cheap shot there.
Yeah, going pretty well, I think. Tragically, I did try to get into footy here in Victoria. For those of you, I think you're all based here, but it just didn't make any sense to me. I preferred contact sport. So rugby's where my heart is. Look, I'll go back a little. Adam touched on my Kiwiness. That's why I'm in a t-shirt on this freezing cold Melbourne day. I'm from the South Island of New Zealand, a little town called Timaru, which is probably the 26th biggest city in New Zealand, which is an important fact for everybody if you're taking notes. Great little town to grow up in and move away from. So having grown up with both my parents were small business owners, and I'll round this out when I come to Xero more at the end of this intro. But they were small business owners, so I grew up in the back of a hairdressing salon, listening to the chat from young hairdressers and learning all about life there, and also understanding how hard my mum worked and the value of a dollar. And I think there's, people in business come from many different backgrounds, but I feel very lucky that I grew up really understanding the value of hard work, I think, and the value of earning a dollar, and how important relationships were to the success of a small business, and subsequently, businesses that are $12 billion or even larger, like Coles, that I've worked in since. Relationships and managing up and managing across and managing your team are critical elements that you need to wrangle and to bring your upbringing to bear. And I'll be quite quick through my career journey from there. I moved to Christchurch and did an undergraduate degree in philosophy and biology. So that doesn't really connect with where I am now, and nor does the master's degree in forest ecology that I undertook But at the time, I enjoyed going to university to study things I was interested in. And I imagine you guys are the same and are studying business and entrepreneurship, because there's never been really a better time to be in this space. Technology has really been democratized. It's no longer just in the space of monolithic companies and really expensive to roll out. A startup, a scale up, any size business can leverage technology relatively cheaply, in fact, immensely cheaply compared to history, and get a business going. So there's more than you need more than just a good idea, but the technology means there's never been a better time to enable people with good ideas and a good work ethic. So back to university, I studied those things out of interest, and then the master's degree largely became mathematical and got not that interesting, but I had to finish it because I'd started it, and it was a ticket to ride, really. And of course, with that philosophy and biology background, I then made the decision to move to Japan and teach English in the mountains. So another tangent, another turn that doesn't necessarily make sense according to what I studied, but what I gained in Japan was an incredible appreciation of other cultures, of other ways of thinking and working. And of course, then I also had exposure to people from all over the Western world who were also teaching English in that environment. So it opened up a network to me that has been really precious and a source of strength throughout my subsequent career. So I moved there when I was 23, lived there for 3 years, and still in touch and have had career introductions and successes from those interactions. And hopefully you guys all interact with those either in your course around you or with your tutors, and the life you're having at university are very formative relationships for you. It was a long time ago for me, so I'm not sure it's exactly the same as it was in my day. But again, the Japanese experience for me was a wonderful cultural experience. But again, in business, the most important thing for me as a common thread all the way through is relationships and learning, and always being, I've always been attracted to and wanting to be around people who were smarter than me, or who knew things I didn't know or had experience I didn't have that I was interested in getting. So I guess that could be summed up with curiosity. So the curiosity that I've had has helped form relationships that have helped me in life and in business. After the 3-year stint in Japan, I moved to the UK and started quite absolutely from zero there. None of my studies clearly at university were going to get me a decent job, but I ended up through a contact from Japan that I worked with there, being introduced to a company called Flight Centre. Flight Centre is quite well known in Australia and is quite a large company. In fact, is suffering quite greatly at the moment from a high share price 18 months ago to $10 today, much like what happened in the GFC. But at that time and in that country, Flight Centre was very entrepreneurial. It was really my formative years in business because we only had 30 stores in that company at the time in the UK, and we were a long way from head office. So we were given great freedom to experiment with how the customers in the UK market would respond to a brand they didn't know at all and hadn't already established itself, and how we would bring the product that we had, which we thought was great and very, very heavily dependent on people and the ability to sell dreams, which is what travel is all about. And that company was growing quite quickly. Of course, my mother was dismayed that I had a master's degree and was suddenly a travel agent working in South London. But what I recognized early on, I think, and through my contact from Japan, was that this business was growing very fast and there were going to be a lot of opportunities. So the thread that's also been common throughout my career, I would say, is I've been attracted to high growth businesses. So where there's an opportunity for a business to grow really quickly, it's been an exciting place to be, and contributing to the strategy, and then sometimes more important than the strategy, the execution of how we go to market and how we connect with our customers. I really learned that not only from my parents, but in my proper professional days, early days in London at Flight Centre. And one of the key tenets of their philosophy, many businesses will have philosophies on their wall and values that they live by, and they may not be referred to very often, but like Xero, Flight Centre very much lived the values on the walls, and it was people, it started with people, and the people aspect is about the people you work with first and foremost, because if you don't have a happy team who are motivated and engaged and wanting to solve a problem for the world or for their business, or being problem solvers, they can't then bring their best work to your customers. So it starts with you and your team being motivated and focused and happy before you can bring that to your customers and build great products or take a great product to market. I'll fast forward a little through those years. I spent 10 years in London, starting at the shop front, you might say, with a master's degree in my back pocket, but ultimately ended up as general manager of Flight Centre UK and running 500 salespeople, a new corporate division selling corporate travel, and a number of other brands that we actually started in the UK and are now part of the Flight Centre pantheon worldwide, because we were given the freedom to try things and fail. So you'll often hear that quote in business books you're reading, fail fast or test and learn. We did a lot of that, and we made a lot of mistakes. We didn't do any customer research before we tried a brand, and sometimes the other way around. I'll give you an example. Rents were getting out of control in one of our London stores, and what we decided to do was to bring the back wall forward and make the environment more intimate for the customer, so the customer experience was cozier in the front of the store. But we put a team in the back of the store that didn't face customers, and we started putting Google AdWords up, or at the time it was Yahoo. I don't know if any of you are all old enough to remember Yahoo even, and what was going on at the time, but we actually thought that this would be a good spot for students to come and do their gap year travel and book round the world trips. So that was our concept, and our customers actually rejected that concept. The customers that embraced the concept were managing directors and executive assistants looking to book business class and first class travel around the world. So they were turning up off our online ads and booking £20,000 trips with high-end hotels, first class flights, helicopter rides and all sorts. And actually our customers found us rather than us having a good idea. And that part of our business became the most popular part of the business for any of our 500 sales consultants to aspire to being part of. And the reason I tell that story is we were trying to solve a problem of rents getting more expensive, so the cost to serve getting higher. And we thought we had a great idea that we would take to market, but didn't do any market research, just launched the team. And then our customers actually showed us the way. And that relates to how we've uncovered product at Xero along the way as well. These customers showed us that there was a massive demand out there for high-end travel, as well as the round-the-world travel options we were trying to come up with. We painted stores different colours than our brands. We got told off for things. We asked for forgiveness, not permission, from head office when they deigned to turn up. And we also had the privilege of the founder, a chap called Graham Turner, who started Flight Centre probably 40 years ago now. He's a great and inspiring retail genius, and we had the pleasure of him coming over every 3 months and talking to us about our plans and our strategy. So exposure to somebody as smart and with the foresight that he had was a great boon for our capabilities as well. So again, get exposure to people smarter than you or have done things that you haven't done yet. It would be a key piece of advice if I may suggest it. It fell into my lap in that environment, but it's something I look back on with much gratitude for the fortuity of it. So 10 years there, had a baby boy and decided that he needed to grow up with a proper accent. So I moved back to New Zealand to enable him to grow up in an environment where he could play decent contact sport and speak properly. But after 10 years in London, actually, New Zealand was very slow paced. The speed of life in New Zealand is a lot slower than London, and having a kid and no sleep made things interesting. And we decided actually then to move to Melbourne and sort of have a happy medium between the great things that are around us in a country like this, as we're seeing with COVID, actually, the ability to respond well and be governed well, ideally, and live in a beautiful country. I worked in a private equity firm for a little while, and then landed at Scoopon, which is a daily deals site. I don't know if many of you have been around long enough to remember there were 100 daily deal sites in Australia around 2010, 2011, and many of which have either been consolidated or gone out of business since. But it was it was a time when there was an absolute boom in demand for great value, and it was a new model started by Groupon in the US. Sorry, I'm just going to take a question from my son who's yelling at me and signaling at me, and this is COVID life, so hopefully you can just bear with me for a sec. Yes, sure. Am I allowed to have a shower was the question. I've got them tightly tight on the rules. I should hope so. He's a 13-year-old boy. They definitely need showers. Excuse me. This is happening all over Xero, you know, with our 3,000 staff worldwide. We might be talking to a little puppy will jump on somebody's laptop and they'll switch off all of a sudden, or a child will come in and scream at the parent about something they need. I'm sure those of you who have pets or parents or even flatmates in the house are experiencing the same. So Scoopon was an amazing experience, again, exposed to entrepreneurs who were taking risks and really moving a market, opening up new markets. In fact, Scoopon has been one of the survivors. Groupon, Scoopon, and Lux Group are the three that are still trading on the model that they used to out of the 100 that were around. So I had a great time there growing that business, really triple digits for a couple of years. That was exciting. Started my own business in a little of that model. And then unfortunately, well, I'll skip to the chase, 2 years of hard graft, building a product and then taking it to market about a month after Luxury Escapes launched. It was a travel product, and it was high-end holidays for less than half price, and we had a great model because I'd been doing that at Scoopon. But then Lux Group launched Luxury Escapes at a very inconvenient time for all the work that we'd put in. So we took that right hook and carried on and persevered and pivoted the business and provided travel product into other databases like Maya One and a few other online databases that didn't have travel product at the time. But ultimately, it didn't work out. We ran out of runway. So having that scar tissue from running our own businesses and bootstrapping it and hoping and dreaming what would be possible, and then have it not eventuate how we wanted to, was also a great lesson. And it's really helped temper my enthusiasm for, and not my enthusiasm overall, but it's made me more circumspect when making decisions. I always try and think about spending money like it's my own. So if I'm spending my investors' money or my money or a company's money that I'm working for, as I am now, I want to challenge myself and say, would I be spending this money if it was my own money and if it was my own business that I'm making these decisions in? Because I've been through that, and I've had to lay off staff and had those dreams dashed a little bit. So sometimes a little scar tissue and a little failing can be beneficial. In fact, I think COVID's an incredible environment for us all to be quite introspective a little bit, because it's awful what's happening all over the world, and certainly it looks like there's going to be a lot worse happening as time goes on the health front. But equally, times of crisis like the GFC.com bust, I'm old enough to remember that as well, and this time right now, those businesses who navigate these turbulent waters well will come out very, very strong. And I'm very, very confident that Xero, AWS, e-commerce businesses, businesses that encourage working from home or working from distance will do very, very well out of this. And I think it's actually been a portal to drag our future forward. I think the digitization of the economy has been dragged forward by this event, which may have been some of your questions later on, Adam, so I won't go too deeply into that now. But look, after my own business experience there, I needed to get some cash back in the pocket, so I went to that corporate giant Coles Online, which was a real eye-opener because it's a massive business with tens of thousands of staff. And I ran e-commerce at Coles Online, and this was a bubble within the Coles environment, so it was quite nimble and agile and great fun. And of course, we had a lot of money to be able to spend on online grocery shopping. An incredible business. We turning over something like $580 million in the first year. We grew at 120 million to a $720 million business in the space of a year. The demand for online grocery shopping was huge, but what it really exposed me to was data. The data that a shopping business has on an individual customer is quite incredible. And that opened my eyes up to, as it had back at Flight Centre when we went online and took direct inquiry, the speed at which you can scale when you really understand your customer, is quite mind-blowing these days. As I touched on right at the start, the democratization of technology has given everybody the opportunity to have a platform and to grow quickly if customers love your product. But the data you have on an individual shopper is quite phenomenal when they choose 70 items in a basket and shop every 2 weeks. It's in fact why Amazon bought Whole Foods. It's not for the profit you make in online grocery shopping, because there isn't any, but it's the data that you get on the individuals that shop that they'll be interested in. So Coles was an interesting experience and not my favorite sort of spot because of the size of the business, but it was certainly a great learning experience for me, being surrounded by people in that space and learning about fast-moving consumer goods, which took me to where I am now. And I'm just coming up on my 3rd year at Xero, and I might pause for a breath and try and see if everyone's still awake and with me. I do apologise, I did do all that in one great diatribe, but I might pause and see if Adam's got something.
No, Jared, interesting. As you're telling the story, I was thinking, I'm crossing out questions such as, how did your journey from, these are questions from the students that have submitted over the last week or so. How did your journey start from a Masters of Science in Biology to Sales Director? Tick, we've done that one. How do you keep sales guys motivated? You've talked about people, happy teams, motivating, solving problems, putting things out there. You've talked about, some strategies, successful strategies of putting some products and stuff out there. You've talked about the unsuccessful journey. So I'll let you go because you keep ticking off these questions, Jared, in your story. So it's actually, and we didn't, the whole idea of these sessions is to keep it more of a conversation. But I'm interested in certainly what we've, some of the things that we've been working with the teams through the journey, and certainly the concept of this failing fast. Really, I know we talk about it as a concept. I try and spin it a little bit, learning fast. So, and the way of learning is putting stuff out there. And we had a great 3 hours with the teams, with a couple of industry guys, David and Simon Rosenberg from Seek, in doing that. Focusing on that data element, and I might pivot right into the Xero because it's probably more sophisticated, and I'm sort of seeing this in my journey, similar sort of duration back into, we might say, the decades, but to now, there is a lot more sophistication with data and customer engagement. What are some of the things that potentially you're doing now around go-to-market, customer engagement, product, pushing products out there that you're doing today compared to what you're doing 20 years ago that the students might be beneficial for the students?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, sorry to wipe out all those other questions. I can always go deeper on any element, trust me, but you might not want that. The data piece has been just, I do think, if I can flip it a different way. So your example of learning fast is a much better way to put it. When I speak to my team, I speak in terms of saying we have to be trying to learn quickly. We can't just rely on how we've been successful to date. History isn't always the greatest pointer to what you should be doing in the future. And I say we should be trying 10 things. And if 7 of those 10 things don't work out and 3 did, that's okay. That's about the ratio that's okay to be learning at. If we try 5 and 5 work, we're not trying hard enough. If we try 10 and 10 fail, we're not smart enough. So somewhere in there, we should be trying things that are worth a crack and learn quickly, and then be able to pull out of it. And don't think of that as wasted work, because when you're experimenting, whether it be in a product or doing a survey to market, or asking about customer appetite for a new product, any of those things, any of that data, whether it turns it into a new product or not, it matters. It matters to know. So once you get that information is data, and it's important to have gone down box canyons. And often I'm speaking to some of our product guys, and they want to understand every element of how you see the future unfolding for a product and what it will deliver right from the start, so that they only have to build it once and just stay on the straight and narrow page. And I try to speak to that being impossible, and that actually not being our ambition, because nobody can know from here to there exactly what the outcome's going to be, and what the environmental influences are going to be. Or like that example from Flight Centre, our customers actually, without being asked, let us know we were pitching the wrong product, and they actually demanded that we provided a different one by booking much different holidays than we'd intended. So my point there is that getting your product team in a tech environment comfortable to go down blind alleys to learn and take that data back so that they can find that pathway that leads to a final product. Again, whether in tech or other, is really, really important. So for me, data points around your customer demand and questions you want answered. What problem are you trying to solve? How can we test that we could solve that problem this way, that way, or another way? And then be ready to be adaptable and agile along the way. Pivot's probably something that's overused these days, and particularly in the COVID environment, is this business, that business, pivoting. But it's about adaptability, I think, as a character trait, and as an outlook. I would suggest, certainly from my experience, is adaptability is probably the key piece. Curiosity, adaptability, gather the data, and then make as informed decisions as you can. You might have 70%, 80% of the data you need, but to move forward is more important than to be 100% comfortable to get started, because you'll never get there, or you'll start too late, or somebody will be more adaptable or agile than you and spin up your idea before you did, like Luxury Escapes.
Yeah. And I think that sort of leads me into that next extension of it was one of the questions the students asked, was sort of the prioritization of features, because, and it's something that the groups have been working through in the sessions last night, was a clear articulation of the problem statement within that problem domain. Who is the customer, and what is very explicitly the problem you're trying to solve that isn't too broad, but not too specific that you're not solving anything of material value, but not too broad where you don't do anything well. And that there's a bit of art in that as well as science, and then, so the question really is, in that context, the prioritization of features which should equal value to the customer. I think we're building a feature is solving some problem of some description, of some varying degree of value. And in that context of ambiguity, of being able to move at a certain space, what are some of the techniques, Jared, that you guys have deployed at Xero, or others, that might be useful to students as they close out some of their projects over the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Gee, that's the, well, pick a number, $26 million question, isn't it?
It is.
Or the $0 question if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
So important. I think it depends what stage of the journey your business is at. And if I may, I imagine early stages for this group, how hard you pivot and how strongly you prioritize things you're not 100% clear on. Certainly, if I'll speak from Xero's point of view at the moment, we've become, so we were the disruptor, the business, actually our most significant channel to growth historically has been via accountants and bookkeepers. They've been the magic bullet for Xero. We call them our unpaid sales force, or other people have. I don't call them that because they're actually paid very well as accountants and bookkeepers by the businesses that bring them on. But in terms of Xero, they have been great advocates for Xero, shaking up the cumbersome products that were available before from our previous market dominant competitors. So Xero early on made a decision to be in the cloud, and was born in the cloud and maintained a single database, whereas many of our rivals acquired other businesses and have ended up with a cumbersome array of different databases. That said, we are now of a size where we've just gone through that phase where a whole lot of strategy people arrive, and we're looking to see how we expand globally. From the 180 markets we're in, we've got offices in 6 or 7 countries. So big enough now, and Australia remains the engine room, but won't be for long, with the growth of the UK market, Asia and North America coming along strong. Decisions around prioritization are really, really tricky, and they're even harder now because everything for us, every part of the business has a priority that is important and does deliver customer value, but when does it deliver customer value? So there will inevitably be tension between potentially product owners, marketers and salespeople within a business, and debating around what the immediate need is to have cash flow, which is critical, of course, to be able to pay your people and to keep the lights on. So cash flow and or funding is really, really, really important. But beyond that, are you looking to serve a need in a year's time or in 3 years' time? And in business our size, you have to look at both your tactical execution now, how we're competing in market, what our competitors are doing. You really, really have to keep your fingers on the pulse, as I learned the hard way, of what the competitive environment looks like. Is there somebody already in market doing what you're doing? Could you do it better than them? Why do you think that took, really challenge yourself rather than just out of hubris, ask yourself or ask a neutral party genuinely, how does my product compare to that product? Like a blind wine tasting, and get some, be open to genuine and potentially harsh feedback, because it might be the saving of your life savings, it might be the saving of your investment, it might be the saving of your business, or it might, and in an ideal world, validate your product and your idea and your thinking. Early on, Xero made some good decisions like that and went hard. Now I think, and I won't speak out of school, but it's much harder now to pick priorities over whether it's product, whether it's marketing, whether it's data, and to take a global view. The UK is going to be an important growth market for us. So how do we invest in product in the UK, but not let go of the engine room that Australia has been, that already has loyal customers that we don't want to lose? Hopefully you have these problems in the next few years, if not months, with your own businesses, because it's a good problem to have, if I'm honest. It's not a bad thing to have to face into those problems, but it is important to take your team on the journey. So as you scale, make sure that your team, as far as you're comfortable to, are aware of your vision and your pathway to achieve the vision. I mean, in the ecosystem space, ours was to build a network of innovation for small businesses on Xero. So the whole ambition is to help small business owners all over the world run their businesses better. And the idea of Xero was, geez, it's cumbersome to have to do the books, to have my wife or husband doing the books while I do the work during the week, and it uses up a day a week or more. Let's take that pain away from them so they can do what they signed up for in running that business. So simplifying your customer's life got grabbed onto massively. We helped accountants and bookkeepers run their practices better first. So the problem we were solving was accountants and bookkeepers have a really cumbersome process. Let's automate as much as we can in the cloud. And then we got acolytes on board. Then we amplified those acolyte stories, those advocates, and we told those case study stories over and over again, and it spread like wildfire. So now we have an incredibly strong Facebook community and other social platforms where we have an army representing for us, so we don't have to. So that's when you are achieving scale. Scale happens via a moment like that or a channel like that can amplify your voice without you having to hire an army of salespeople. So that's been terrific for us. And now we go, okay, but to be the global business we want to be, and to the ambition that we have to be, 10 times, 20 times the size we are now, can we continue to do the same thing we did in the past? In Australia, where we've already captured 900,000 odd small businesses out of the 2 million available, it's a finite market. So what do we do next? We need to keep looking over the horizon about, okay, even when my product's landed and is popular, what will be the next challenges that keep me relevant to my audience, that keep me ahead of my rivals, and that maybe give me the platform, if I want to grow, to expand into new addressable markets. Kind of convoluted way to answer your question, but there's quite a lot to it, and it really depends on where you are on the journey of your business, I think.
I think no, Jared, that's right, and some of these answers aren't that clear, and it's trying to encourage the students that to look for something that's so crystallized and so clear is the fool's gold, if you like. That clear pathway doesn't exist. So it's really being able to work in that world of ambiguity. You've touched on a series of themes that I just want to sort of reflect on with the students. Is really the people, the critical piece. We've worked on building out a social contract. Now, so how do they operate together? What are their rules? What are the norms that you want your teams to? How do you handle discourse? What are some protocols about turning up on time? Making sure you're picking up your fair share. So you're building those elements, because that as you're starting to grow, that high performing teams, in my experience, discourse is a really encouraged part of that relationship, because we're one of the, and dovetailing that into one of the groups last night, they'd had a challenge navigating their solution to the point where they were really brutally honest with us, where they thought this solution isn't going to work. Now they've got 3 weeks, 4 weeks left to present back at the end, but part of that is that brutal honesty to say, okay, this isn't going to work. And to your point, Jared, okay, there's no shame in stopping. In fact, that's the right thing to do. Now what they've got is a set of skills, tool sets to quickly adapt. And I much prefer the word adapt. Darwin talks a word about survival. That survival is about adapting, not the fittest. It's about adapting. And I agree with that concept wholeheartedly. And also the other concept, 2 other concepts that resonated with what David and Simon were sharing with the groups last night was simplification. Simplify it. Keep it really simple for customers. So that's really cool that we're resonating in the real market world. A company that I remember speaking to a guy by the name of Joe Powell at Seek, and I don't know if you know Joe Powell at Seek. Oh, of course, Rachel Powell.
I know Rachel.
Yeah, right, of course. So, Joe, I remember he spoke at a think tank we put together, and he was sort of talking about how you've gone from being the hunter to the hunted, and the challenges to get things through are different, where it's resource constraints when you're small to resource competition when you're larger. What markets are you chasing? Who wants those resources? So, but interesting. So simplification, but also embrace that feedback. Embrace the feedback with integrity and humbleness and being honest and say, okay, well, let's really listen to what the customer's saying, because they'll help us navigate through that ambiguity. And I think once you release yourself of those concepts, it actually frees you up to be more innovative rather than holding on to things that you might have an opinion on, whatever. Just another question though, I just wanted to align some of those comments, those comments and insights with the team that are consistent with what we're seeing with the groups, what we're trying to communicate with the groups, and what David and Simon did last week with Xero. Just want to come back to that Xero journey again. How did Xero start to niche in? Because obviously it had a very established player in MyOb in Australia. It had sort of, Intuit, QuickBooks, TurboTax into North America, for example. How did Xero niche in and say, right, we've got to sort of get a beachhead and grow from there, say 10 years ago when you had such an established player? And it dovetails into one of the students' questions.
Yeah, great question. And there are always, I imagine Rod will be writing a book, who's our founder. There are always great books to get information on how businesses fared in the early days. But Rod tells a great story. It was literally a garage project. He'd been an entrepreneur and built and sold businesses before. But he turned up and got frustrated with the idea of having to go to his accountants with a box full of papers and ask his accountant to do his books, and he only lived around the block. But oh, hang on, here's Invader 2. Yes, paper, you know where it is. Good luck. Come back to me in 5 minutes if you can't find it in the printer. All right, sorry guys, this keeps happening. That's Finley, by the way. Adam has coached Finley at cricket, for those of you who don't know. Asking the good questions. Very important to interrupt your dad at a moment like this to find paper. Where was I? Yes. Niching.
Yeah.
So Rod's foresight was great in that there's got to be a better way. This is a very manual process. There's got to be a better way, and he'd had experience with starting in the cloud. But I touched on it earlier. The real magic bullet came when they one by one went to the accountants in their circle of his own accountant, who's also one of our founders, and said, show us your work processes, and identified every part of the work processes they did. And they said to the accountants, look, we want to automate this and take away, take it from taking 2 days to do this to taking an hour to do this. And the accountants were, gee, that's amazing. Have you built a product like that? And of course the answer was, yeah. Build, come back, present the product. So they were very engaged very early on with the direct consumer they were going to be working with. We told them the problems they had, and then they built to it. And then those accountants became advocates. And then instead of having that point where a business might have a product owner and a founder, or in the tech world, and then needing a marketing department and then a sales force and growing that way, you actually outsourced the sales force by having accountants that had problems solved for them, who liked these founders and liked the product that was coming out and believed in the vision. So the vision being described was, hey, we're not there yet, but we're going to be traveling down this road, and at the end of it, you're going to have code-free accounting. So compliance work will all be automated. All the coding will be done for you. And paint a picture like that, a true vision of where we will end up. We're not there yet. This is, more than 10 years down the journey, but there's a great visual actually of having the process of building product and being able to adapt as your customers come along. And it's got a series of sad faces and then a happy face at the end. Picture trying to build a car, and then you start with a chassis, and it's got no wheels on it, so it can't go anywhere. And you add a wheel to it, so that's phase 2. Customer's still not happy because it can't use it. And then it's really hard to actually describe without the picture, but I'll forward it to you afterwards.
The good part of that, Jared, is just, sorry, jumping there, that you're describing a customer journey and the emotional state as they're coming along, which is what the groups have been working on. So what's interesting, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to finish that point. So putting that car together, the customer's only happy at the end. Whereas if you start the picture with a scooter and then move to a bike and then move to a motorbike and then a car, you've got a smiley face all the way along because there's something that's making the customer happy before you get to your end journey. So you're building as you're going along, and exactly as you just described, it's a customer journey.
Yeah.
And they come along with us and they feel part of the ride. They feel like they're, and many of them are early investors, because they then told the story to the wider community saying, you know that thing you guys all hate? We hated it too, but these guys solved it for us. Let me tell you about it. So case studies and advocates became the way that Xero got very big.
Yeah, and I think and probably haven't touched on this with the students strong enough, but the importance of that customer engagement is the investment they make with you. And you touched on something really cool from a go-to-market perspective, which hasn't really been the focus of this particular journey with the team. We've really been focused on that product market fit, really. But what you're really talking is the distribution piece of the Magic Quadrant. And so if you can get people into that sort of that product market fit journey with you, they become the ones that they've invested in it. And there's a lot of pride for them to say, hey, we've been on this journey. Oh, there's my feature. Oh, they're listening to me. They're engaged. They know that they're not there. And that comes back to that honesty piece. Yeah. Saying we're not there. This is where we want to go. And once they believe and you hold that true, the question I've got then, Jared, because it does take integrity and honesty to hold that. How do you hold that? As you grow and stay true to that connection with the customer that's invested in a particular brand and product, how does Xero go about holding that? And you talked about relationships earlier. How do you hold that? How do you keep holding that with your accountants? And
so that's terrific questions again, and you're much better at being very succinct with these concepts than I tend to fly off and talk non-stop, and then you're able to get the word out like adapt and simplify. Those are great words. I've been taking notes there.
I've taken a hit myself, Jared. No, it's good.
So I think it's the most fundamental thing. The key things that pop up in my background from growing up and from my mum and dad are honesty, bravery, and integrity. Those are things I hold very dear to my heart. And the bravery bit is to try things and be okay with them not working out. But honesty and integrity, I think in this day and age particularly, when it's so hard won and so easily lost, is something anybody in business or in life, because all our lives are lived so openly now, whether on social platforms, and it's the same for businesses. There's nowhere to hide. If you've done the wrong thing by a customer, in the old days you might have just not had to talk to them or see them in the street, but these days there is no hiding, and so there shouldn't be. So having a North Star, they keep using around Xero, and I keep going, why don't we ever say a Southern Cross, because that also doesn't move in the sky, but I digress. North Star is a very North American concept, I think. But you know what I mean. It's something to always, when you're looking at decision making, to go, hang on, that's my values. This is how we wanted to operate when we started this business, and always make decisions referring back to those values. And not since Flight Centre in the UK have I, and I've worked in a few businesses in between, as I touched on, have I seen such true adherence from the leadership, from the ground up and from the top through the business to really genuinely, and I'm in the senior leadership team here in Australia, to use the values to contribute to our decision making. So when we're stuck on something, it's going, oh, how are we going to decide around this point or that point? It can feel like a catch-22 sometimes. And referring back to our values of being human, being champions of new ideas, typically they've gone out of my mind. So team is one, champion is one, bravery is another, but being real. So we'll refer back to our values when making decisions. So to answer your question, when you're starting out on your business journey, knowing your customer, knowing who your key partnerships will be, and being open and honest with those partners around where you're at and where you want to head is so important. How do you hold to it when you're confronted, as you will be in your business life, with a customer issue versus a product priority issue? Sometimes it's best just to actually put that out there and say, you know, we'd love to be able to do that for you. And we know our competitors have that feature already, but it's something we're working on. We've just got this other priority at the moment. Stick with us. We're going to get there. Or if you're not going to get there, say that as well, because the honesty can actually be the tether that holds on to them, even though a rival product might at that time and in that moment be a better fit for them. Your approach can be appreciated a lot more. Look, in a public forum, it's a little tricky to speak about, but we have a major rival in the US who generally isn't well thought of in the partner, the bookkeeping and accounting community. And the reason they love us there, and the reason we have an opportunity, a foot in the door, is because we are so passionate about our partners being on the journey with us. And so they will advocate for us and we will grow there because the rivals have left the back door open in that space.
Jared, I might open up to any of the students, if there was anything that Jared's been talking through. Does anyone want to sort of ask Jared a question that might be relevant to the group and the dynamics that you've got at the moment?
Adam, we had a question come through just privately to me on the chat from our student rep team member, Anne.
Yep.
I think she had something she wanted to ask Jared. I'll just take you off mute, Anne. There you go.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, Jared.
Hey, Anna.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and your insight with us today. So earlier you say that we should try something new that we haven't done yet. I totally share the same thought with you. However, in this information explosion time, there are way many resources and many opportunities opening to us. So how should we have a wise decision on what we should take on? Could you please share some of your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Gee, what a great question. And I'll take it right up. You know, nobody knows where the economy's heading. Nobody knows where COVID's heading. And when you read all the content that's out there, half of the experts will say one thing and the other half say the exact opposite. So it's really, really difficult in this day and age, to your point, to distill what really where the truth lies. And I think most people with a bit of experience under the belt will actually admit to saying, we just don't know. We just don't know where those pieces of our world are heading. Who would have predicted Donald Trump being president? Certainly not me, but the media got that really wrong as well. The media said there's no way, no how, because they were all blinded. They weren't open to what was really happening on the ground, and they weren't really listening to reports of a groundswell of support for that vote. And so we got told around the world in the news that it was never going to happen. And so it was a real lesson for everybody, I think, in I think using real data and proper source information. I think the answer I can give you here is A, geez, it's bloody hard and I still don't know. But B, I never like to be presented findings in slide decks that don't have data and validatable data that I can validate from raw source. So you have to, at some level, as a business person, really understand the numbers and understand data and how it can be manipulated. When I was 15, this is a very long time ago, as Adam kindly pointed out again at the start, and none of this goes away, Adam. When I was 15, I took a course in statistics at Timaru Boys High, and the first thing the teacher said to us was, there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. And what he meant by that was you can make any argument you like with the numbers if it's presented in a certain way. So ever since then, I've been, I think, optimistically cynical of what I get told, and I always want to validate. I think even the mafia has a great line, trust but validate, or trust but verify, it might be. So I trust you, I respect you and everything. I'd just like to see the source data for that. And equally, on the other way, when you're presenting data to potential investors or business partners or to customers, make sure it's accurate, true, and that you have, even if you don't want to present all the detail at that point, that you have good source data to be able to demonstrate your point, because an investor or a business person or a customer that is able to understand the numbers and can pick apart your data will be helpful to you, because then you'll know not to do that again, but also be prepared for questions you're not expecting and have that detail to hand. I'm not sure I exactly answered your question, but really how to distill good information out of bad in a noisy world. I think, you know, I use Medium and Hustler are my main news sources in my space, and I love reading about it. And then they always reference where they got whether they've got opinions or whether it's data driven, and I'll go deep on pieces I'm interested in to find out how they came to their conclusion, and then contribute to decision making back at Xero.
Thanks, Jared. I'm just mindful we've got 5 minutes to go. We could go another hour, and we might actually we might have to have a Jared Baker part 2. I think maybe like a Star Wars, maybe some prequels and sequels, Jared. But look, just in terms of closing, in a wrap up, is there just something in your mind that, you know, whether it was something that was said to you, whether it was, you know, whether it was from a Graham Turner, who is, you know, he's one of the great Australian business stories, obviously, you know, and that whole Flight Centre story is an amazing story, and how they started and how he took that business to where it is today. Is there any sort of pearl of wisdom that you think in the students as they close out their projects, which is really creating an innovation within their problem space, that might assist them tightening that up as they get to the pointy end of the semester?
Oh, gee, I wish I'd prepared one earlier. Tricky. I think those, if I'm perfectly honest, as I'll try to be, Adam, those great quotes come out after a drink on a Friday afternoon. So maybe if you call me at the end of the day.
I'll slack them across. If you can't, don't worry, I won't put you on the spot now.
I'll double down on something I already said, and it's in the philosophies and values of Flight Centre right back at the start, and I've emphasised it throughout this conversation, is your people. Your people, it was the number one value, the number one important thing. Yeah. Profit was actually third. Profit was just an outcome of making something valuable for your people and your customers. So you end up making money as an outcome. That shouldn't be the goal. It's the outcome of producing something worthwhile for your customers. And the other thing, you know, you hear the line, the customer's always right, or customer first. I don't quite ascribe to that. People come first, and there's no more important people than you and your own health and well-being, so that you can turn up with your best decision-making head on, full of health and vitality, and be there for your people, and that you care enough about your people that their health and vitality comes first. Then you can be delivering for your customer. Yep. So I think, you know, good business practice these days starts with knowing yourself and your own health and well-being, and putting that to your own team and giving them permission to be unwell and to look after themselves and to come back stronger. Only then can you really deliver something great for your customers. I don't think you can do that if you're not got a great team and a great mindset yourself.
I think that's a really great observation, and it's probably something that we haven't touched upon, but I know when I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and Jeanette's a classic, David, in that when I always ask Jeanette, how are you going? Jeanette flicks straight into the business. And I let it go for about a minute, and I pull it back and say, no, Jeanette, how are you going? Really, that's the question. How are you? Because that, being around and going through those journeys, you tend to forget that at times, you know, as you're getting caught into where you're going in your ambition. But Jared, look, on behalf of the students and the university, I wanted to thank you. I'll hand over to David. David normally traditionally does the close, but on behalf of Anna, Nikki and David, and personally, thanks for your time today. I know the students got a lot out of it. I've actually got a couple of students going guests to a part 2, Jared Baker, and agree. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And part of this is really getting the students to immerse themselves in your journey. And just in that journey, that, as I said, there was a lot of those questions that just revealed themselves. And it's just an invaluable format for the students to engage with industry people to validate what we're trying to achieve through the course, to say, you know, this isn't theoretical. This is the stuff we're trying to portray and get you to do, get your hands on into your craft, if you like. It is a craft. Yeah. You can take forward into your career or into a startup.
I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys. You're coming alive in the business world in an age where, you know, there's so much opportunity. And don't be afraid if things don't go perfectly for you. Be brave, work hard, and I would add, have fun. You know, have fun along the way. Our team are really hardworking, and we really do sweat the tough stuff and the hard decisions. But it's also a lot of fun. We're very, you know, there's good humour, and I think the Aussies and the Kiwis and the Brits, and I think humanity these days has to laugh, otherwise we'll cry. And I do like that British sense of humour. That's something I fell in love with over in England, and that self-deprecating approach. I won't ramble on again, as I'm apt to do, but do have fun while you're doing this, and good luck to you all.
No, thanks, Jared. David, I'll hand over to you to do the close.
Oh, look, thanks, Adam. Just a quick one. Greatly enjoyed that, Jared. Lines with a lot of the stuff that we're actually building at Monash, and foremost of those is actually the values that our program runs on. We've got 4 core values, and we bring our students back to that. And the first one actually is humble excellence. So it's about being good and showing people that you're good and not telling them that you're good. So a lot of that stuff really resonated with us. We're enormously grateful that people like yourself spare us the time to come in and interact with the students, because they do get a great deal out of it. And I think the poll's showing very strongly that there needs to be a Jared Baker number 2, round 2, by the looks of it. So we'd be really happy if you come back and have a chat with us. So thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. It's been a lot of fun. Much appreciated.
Jared. Yeah, stay well.
You too. See you, mate.
Thanks, guys. Well, with that team, we'll wrap up. Have a great weekend. I've got a bit of popcorn to chew today to get through some videos and stuff for you guys. So thanks again. It's been a great 24 hours. Hopefully, it's starting to crystallise a little bit more on this journey. It's not a course that's going to obvious. It's not going to be obvious in the way it reveals itself, and we're seeing that through what Jared shared with us, what Ollie shared with us, what Simon and David shared with the team. So you just got to keep going, keep persisting, be brave, as Jared, be brave, be persistent, be resilient. So thanks, guys. Enjoy the Friday, and good luck with the trivia this afternoon. Bring it on.
Yeah. See ya.
See you guys.
Everyone, have a nice day.
Well done.